Run a hand through your hair right now, because that small automatic bit of grooming ties you directly to a people we were trained to picture as filthy, lice-ridden barbarians. These same Vikings turned out to be so meticulous about their appearance that an English monk accused them of weaponizing it. This whole video sits inside one stubborn paradox. By the standards of everyone living around them, the Vikings were strikingly clean, and yet the largest fossilized human stool ever pulled out of the ground belonged to one of them, packed end to end with parasites. Keep both of those facts in your head at once, because they have no business being true together. This was never a society that simply forgot to wash. The Vikings placed a deliberate, high-stakes bet, pouring enormous effort into the visible body, the hair, the beard, the skin, the clothing, while living inside a disease environment with no running water, no plumbing, and no concept that the real danger was invisible. They built a spotless front end on top of a back end that was quietly working to kill them, and the bill for that arrangement came due deep in the gut. That leads us to the strangest object in the entire story. In 1972, underneath a bank in the English city of York, archaeologists lifted something out of the wet, peaty soil that one scientist would later insure as if it were a national treasure. This single find unlocks the whole paradox, though the answer hides in just about the least dignified place imaginable, which is why we are going to set it aside for a few minutes and come back to dig through it properly. And I do mean dig. Begin with the cleanliness, because the evidence runs deep, and it starts inside the calendar itself. Saturday, in Old Norse, was Laugardagr, a word that translates almost too neatly as washing day, built from lag, meaning bath or hot water, and dagr, meaning day. The whole day belonged to washing. That root never died, and it still lives on inside the modern Scandinavian languages, resurfacing every single week. Once you actually sit with that, the meaning hits hard, because the Vikings were not bathing whenever the mood happened to strike them. They were running cleanliness as a scheduled, society-wide routine, the way a modern system runs a weekly maintenance window, with everyone resetting on the same day. The archaeology confirms what the language only hints at. Dig into a Viking grave, and one of the most common objects waiting there is a comb, carved from antler or bone, often tucked inside its own protective case the way you would shield something you valued. Lying right beside it, you tend to find tweezers, ear picks, and razors, a grooming kit that resembles the one sitting in your bathroom with uncomfortable precision. None of these were afterthoughts. Here is the detail that should stop you cold, because the oldest securely datable runic inscription anyone has ever recovered, carved centuries before the Viking Age even started, was scratched onto a comb. All of that paints them as undeniably clean, and the matter would end right there. Except the people who actually crossed paths with the Vikings could not agree on it at all. Consider the monk first. John of Wallingford, writing from St. Albans Abbey, grumbled that the Danes combed their hair every day, bathed every Saturday, and regularly swapped out their clothes, and that they wielded all of this grooming to, in his telling, undermine the virtue of married women and seduce the daughters of nobles. In his eyes, Viking hygiene amounted to an outright seduction strategy. One catch deserves your attention. 250 years separated Wallingford from the events he was describing, which makes his account no eyewitness report at all, but a centuries-old memory carrying a heavy moral agenda. Now travel across the map to a man who genuinely stood in the room. In the year 921, an Abbasid diplomat named Ibn Fadlan journeyed to the Volga and encountered the Rus, and his verdict could not have landed further from the monks. He branded them the filthiest of all Allah's creatures. Every single morning he watched them share one basin of water, each man rinsing his face and hair, blowing his nose, and spitting into it before passing it along to the next man around the house. That leaves a brutal contradiction. Two reputations that seem to cancel each other out, and the unsettling resolution is that both accounts hold up at once. Because neither man was actually measuring the Vikings, each was measuring them against his own rulebook. Ibn Fadlan came from a world of running water ritual washing, so to him, reusing standing water was not merely unpleasant, it counted as ritually unclean by definition, no matter how the Rus felt about it. The monk came from a Europe where this degree of grooming looked almost suspiciously elaborate. Both of them told the truth. They simply happened to be standing in completely different rooms. The real lesson hiding inside the contradiction is that clean was never one fixed thing. It worked as a front end, a presentation layer, and everyone judged the interface rather than the infrastructure running underneath. All of which loops us straight back to the object buried under that bank in York. The thing archaeologists pulled from the soil is a coprolite, a fossilized human stool dated to the 9th century, stretching around 20 centimeters long, ranking among the largest ever discovered. When a scientist appraised it for insurance back in 1991, he called it the most exciting piece of excrement he had ever seen and ranked it, in its own way, as irreplaceable as the crown jewels. What makes it irreplaceable is the cargo locked inside, several hundred parasite eggs, both whipworm and mawworm. This belonged to someone who ate well, mostly meat and bread, who lived inside a culture devoted to combs and washing days, and whose insides had been colonized by an entire army of intestinal worms. There is the paradox answered, written in the one place nobody ever thinks to check. Viking grooming was genuine, yet it stopped at the skin. The infrastructure propping it up, the latrines, the reused water, the human waste gathered and spread back across the fields as fertilizer, formed a perfect highway for exactly these parasites. The better they looked, the more thoroughly the real threat slipped out of view. Immaculate hair sat directly above a catastrophic gut. Once that gap snaps into focus, the gap between the body you display and the body you actually occupy, the rest of the presentation starts revealing itself. On the Baltic island of Gotland, researchers have identified around 130 individuals, nearly all of them men, who deliberately filed sharp horizontal grooves into their front teeth. That pattern surfaces only at trading sites, which pushed the archaeologists who studied it toward a striking conclusion that the grooves served as a merchant's mark, an identity nobody could counterfeit. Long before paperwork or signatures existed, these men carved their credentials directly into their own bodies, a badge sealed in bone and enamel that simply could not be faked. The grooming, the filed teeth, the eye makeup that one traveler recorded on men and women alike, none of it was vanity for its own sake. All of it operated as a language. The body broadcast who you were, what you belonged to, and how you wanted the world to read you. They kept investing in that signal even as the world steadily ground them down, and the skeletons we have recovered carry the proof, marked by dental problems and aching joints. Polishing the surface stayed the one move available to them, precisely because the surface was the only part they could actually control. Next time your hand drifts through your hair or you reach for a comb without a second thought, recognize what you are really doing. You are running the oldest trick the Vikings ever perfected, telling the world a clean, confident story about yourself and trusting it not to inspect everything churning underneath. They played that exact game without ever knowing the price was crawling around inside them. We at least get to know the price. Whether that knowledge changes the story you tell about yourself is the part still left to you.